Mandalorian Unmasked. This is a great exclusive that we got from Entertainment Weekly. And this article dropped a few days ago, and it really caught a lot of people off guard because, first, the images that drop, we don't have those on your screen. We will describe them for you. The first thing that I think a lot of people noticed was the different looks of the Mandalorian. It looks like this look will evolve here in the first season that we're getting on November 12th when Disney Plus drops. And in just a moment, Jesse's going to break down the colors first because he believes that they could be hinting at some storyline elements based on what we know of Mandalorian lore in the Star Wars galaxy. But first things first, my gosh, Jon Favreau really grabbed my attention because, and he said this a few times, but just the recommitment to this idea that when I watched the cantina scene in A New Hope, well, I want to know what's bringing all these other guys to the cantina to have a drink. Like, what's their adventure? We know the story of how, Luke and Ben show up trying to find a ship to get off of Tatooine, but what's the story behind all these other characters? Like, I'm really curious about that. And I just didn't know if that triggered anything with you guys when you were reading this article. I'll start with David. When you hear Jon Favreau talking about that, Dave Filoni even mentions, like, it's just the idea of having your action figures and getting to play with those characters. And if you had Boba Fett, you were always guaranteed to come up with the best story.
To me, this is outrageously astounding because my first introduction to Star Wars was actually Empire Strikes Back with the Yoda scene at Thanksgiving when I was in second grade. But then once I watched that, I had to go back and watch A New Hope. So I sat there with my cousins and my family, and we watched it. Well, I watched it. They were opening presents and doing other stuff. I was outrageously transfixed on the screen. And we get to this scene, and there's all sorts of cool characters because we've been dealing with humans and robots, but now we get a variety of different aliens. So to me, that's going to be the most exciting thing to me is the diversity that we're going to see coming into the galaxy. We'll have our main character, and I'm looking forward to see who he has to fight and kill. And
we're talking about $100 million, 8 episodes in this first season, and it joins a growing slate of products here for Disney Plus. We know casting Endor in 2020. We're getting the Clone Wars early 20. We're going to get now Kenobi that we know about. We'll talk about that later in the newscast. I said newscast, but later here in the podcast. The Night Job, because we have an idea of when that event is actually taking place on the canonical timeline. But there's so much content, but there seems to be just the driving force right now is behind the Mandalorian because that's what we get the soonest or get that earliest. I love this notion. It's Star Wars that we've never seen before. They did a great little interview with some of the cast members, and they were just talking about how it's a grittier Star Wars, the way it's shot, the way it looks, the way it feels. But at the same time, it's kind of the same. They used similar shooting practices that they did with A New Hope. And it was really cool to hear the cast members talking about, whenever they're talking about like practical effects or when they're talking about how the type of film or the type of camera angles, there was a real emphasis placed on it needed to feel like that original trilogy, which I think it tugs at the older fans in a nostalgic standpoint. But just from a feel, Rogue One is my favorite Disney-era Star Wars movie, okay? That was the same. These are the same words we were fed in 2015 with Rogue One. So if I'm hearing these same things again, I'm really, really excited.
Favreau describes it as, in this EW article, it's like after the Roman Empire falls, or when you don't have a centralized shogun in Japan, and of course the Old West. So a lot of times we can throw the Old West out there because we're very familiar with that, but the fact that he's throwing these other allegories in there too about when the Roman Empire fell and the centralized shogun in Japan, I mean, that tells me that they've really done their homework, really done their research, and they're going to give us some really good stories that are going to cross all of our cultures.
Right. They're going back to the things that inspired Lucas when he was trying to come up with how to do Star Wars in the 70s. And that's really cool because now we've got 40 years of experience. Like, we've watched this for 40 years, right? So we know what inspired George and where it went off. So can you go back and watch what inspired him and take a different tangent or a different branch to approaching the Star Wars story? With what we've seen already, like, I'm all in. Yeah, it's clearly Star Wars that we've never seen. Stormtrooper helmets on pikes. I love the variety of species that we're getting that we talked about. But Jesse, this is what I'm really excited about. And there's a few more things in the article that we can talk about. But what I really want to look into now is you've paid a lot of attention to the look of the Mandalorian. And you had one look. And now in this new footage and these new photos we just got with Entertainment Weekly, we're seeing 2, maybe 3 variations of armor on our, we'll call protagonist right now. So you have this information regarding like the colors that are displayed on his armor. What do you think that means as far as the story that's going to unfold? How does that tie in, you think?
So as far as the Entertainment Weekly photos, what we're actually seeing here is what I'm dubbing his upgraded armor. At Celebration, they made it clear that the Mandalorian or the Mando was going to spend time. He was going to do this throughout the course of the show. Mm. So just at D23, they had one set, of his armor. What we've seen the initial promo photos, and that particular set. It's, you can tell that it's I want to say like scavenged bits and pieces, maybe like stormtrooper armor, but the color schemes on these have been repainted to suit his own needs, or maybe to distinguish that he's not an Imperial. But I just kind of thought it'd be fun to maybe look at the colors that were chosen for that initial promo armor, like what he's initially wearing.
Yeah, let's get into it. Yeah,
and kind of compare that to some of the Mandalorian lore. Now, so this is expanded universe. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is canon,
but this is stuff that influenced Favreau and Filoni.
Yes, this is
wanting to tell these stories of the Mandalorian.
And and they mentioned in this article that they are going to be diving into the culture of Mandalorian. So it would be neat to kind of see some of these elements come in. So I took the time to kind of look at the colors on this armor, and so most of his armor's got kind of a reddish, could be kind of a dark brown, but in some of the lighting you can definitely get a red tone. And red is the color of honoring a father, and that doesn't mean like their father's dead. It just just the memory, or carrying on in a sense. And then blue, he's got hints of blue on his armor, and blue in Mandalorian culture is reliability.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting enough what we know about this character just from the sizzle reel.
The first
he's
trailer.
A talented bounty hunter. He's seen as reliable. So it's interesting that he's got this color on his armor,
and not just reliable that way, but we also know that he's going to be teaming up with Gina Carano's character.
Yep.
And
Cara
so
Dune.
there's going to be this this relationship. Is he reliable for that partner? That'll be cool to watch too.
He's also got some gray, color schemes in there, which is a color of mourning a lost loved one. And then there's also on his armor, there was a little bit like of an orange plate on the boots. And orange is a lust for life,
really?
Like a craving to experience life. Again, this is not canon or anything official, just kind of a theory. But I thought it was a little fun to kind of look at what's out there in the EU and seeing if maybe that it has any sort of driving force into the show, and it'd be kind of surprising if it does.
I think it's really great. I don't know. Like I said before, I don't know how surprising it would be though, because Dave Filoni has been exploring Mandalorian culture going back to the Clone Wars. I don't know why I tripped over those CULs. Now Favreau though, he's been talking about how since he was like 9 or 10 years old, he was writing stories about the Mandalorians. And always intrigued with Boba Fett, had the fewest lines, but the coolest guy. So I think it'd be really fascinating to see, one, if what you just said is incorporated, two, if it's consistent with what was in EU, and then also I think it's great for I think of the Mercs. This could be a really cool opportunity for them to bring a lot more stuff into canon. It could also be a pain in the butt if your armor is one way and then canon says it's something else.
Not so much.
Really?
Actually, yeah. This show is actually a really good thing for us Mandalorian cosplayers, because oftentimes when I'm at an event, I get referred to as Boba Fett or Jango Fett. It was actually funny at Celebration. Steve, he's another part of the the crew, but he took a side by side photo. I was standing next to a Jango Fett cosplayer. It's just like, see the difference, please.
Well, and you mentioned before the show that Favreau and Filoni very vocal. This isn't Boba Fett. The common fan, the lay fan, thinks that this is still a Boba Fett movie that he's somehow appearing in. They've both gone on the record saying Boba Fett will not appear.
Yes, and especially in this Entertainment Weekly article, they've outright said it. This is not Boba Fett. This is a completely new character. And the thing is that George Lucas told Filoni, Boba Fett is not Mandalorian.
He's a clone.
He's a clone. Okay, now and this goes for Jango Fett too. Yes, Boba Fett is wearing Mandalorian armor, but he's not born into it. He is, and Filoni says it. He's influenced, maybe indoctrinated into the culture, but he's not.
There's a lot of leeway there.
There's a lot of leeway there, but this is not Boba Fett. I've been seeing this in a lot of different.
I just always assumed that he wasn't, though, because I just was like, he just probably just ganked the armor like his dad did.
So, and the cool thing back to the pictures here. So his new armor is chrome, and one of the things, and especially in the Celebration teaser sizzle reel that we got, he's given a bar of Beskar, which is Mandalorian armor. It's great stuff. Look it up.
A bar of Beskar?
Beskar.
Beskar. What do you mean by like a bar? Like a
think
a weapon?
no,
Or
like
soap.
Like
iron ingot.
It's like a chunk of metal is what he's given.
Yeah.
So he has to go
really
forge
wrong.
his own armor.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of interesting because it's also part of Mandalorian culture, forging your own armor. Sabine Wren talks about her armor in Rebels, that how she's forged it to herself.
Sabine Wren, of course, the beloved character from the Rebels series.
Oh, yes.
4 seasons of glory.
So, I mean, it's interesting because, his armor is progressing through the show. These 2 shots in this article shows this upgraded armor, and it looks sharp. I'm loving it.
It's going to be really fun to explore, and I think I'm really excited because obviously it's a passion of yours, Jesse, but for someone who doesn't know a whole lot about Mandalorian culture, I go back to what Favreau said and what we said at the beginning of this conversation. I want to see these other bounty hunters. I want to hear their story. I want to see how they engage. But this post Return of the Jedi era, to me, is so interesting. It's always been the area on the Star Wars storyline that I've been most intrigued by because where do we leave Luke and all them? They're at the campfire, and now they have to go out and fix the galaxy. It's like, well, how did they go out and do that? Like, what's happening in the galaxy? And it's not just the Empire trying to clean up its remnants. It's, listen, these bounty hunters, they're trying to get their claim as well. So it's going to be fun to watch that play out.
Thank you for watching Beyond the Blast Doors. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment. Beyond the Blast Doors, a Star Wars conversation.